Good evening, everyone, and welcome to what is the fourth installment of our virtual Science Cafe series based out of UNC's Morehead Planetarium and Science Center. I'm your host, Jonathan Fredrick, where I get the privilege of working with a bunch of science educators and interacting with a bunch of experts like the ones we have tonight. We are going to be talking about the science of connection and living well during pandemic times, and I'm really excited to get started. Before we do that, I want to say hello to everyone and just let you know a little bit about the Science Cafe series. Typically, we are at a bar in downtown Chapel Hill with our fan club and our science enthusiasts, and we have a great time at Back Bar, right in part of Top of the Hill restaurant in Chapel Hill. And tonight, I'm coming to you live and direct from my basement in North Durham, in my game corner, as you can see. So things are a little bit surreal, and we know they are for you too. So we hope you're doing well. Our thoughts are with you. We miss you. We can't wait to see you again in real time, but we are very excited to connect with you in virtual space. I do want to thank our parent entity, which is Morehead Planetarium and Science Center, which is a unit of UNC Chapel Hill. Our mission is to serve the state through science, health, and technology, and tonight's program will certainly do some of that. We also want to thank our friends at Back Bar, Jeff and company there, who do an amazing job with us, and the UNC Chapel Hill chapter of Sigma Xi, who, when we're at the bar, typically provide some funds towards appetizers that everyone gets to enjoy. So I hope you have your favorite snack for tonight as we dive in. The purpose of a cafe is to let experts in an exciting topic share their love of what they do with you and for you to ask questions. This is not really meant to be a lecture. However, since we're not at the bar and you can't be like, hubba, hubba, I object, we have some ways for you to ask questions. If you use your cursor and scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom panel, you should see a little bar down there where you see something that says Q&A, where you can ask a question and answer. We would prefer to use that rather than the chat window. And that way we can track questions and get them to our experts as they get into what they want to talk about. We have a good lineup tonight. We have an all-star cast. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson is someone who we've worked with in the past, long ago as she had published her first book, and she thought tonight's topic might be a great way for her graduate students and her team doing a lot of interesting work to get involved. So we have a few folks who are going to share their research with you, and I'm just going to dive right in. I want to introduce Dr. Fredrickson, and she will introduce the rest of the team. She is the Keenan Distinguished Professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Go Heels. And she has appointments in psychology at the Keenan Flagler School of Business, appointments in psychology and at the Keenan Flagler School of Business. And she is the director of the Positive Emotions and Psychophysiology Laboratory, AKA the PEP Lab. She has done some interesting things. And as I was doing a little background research, I saw an intriguing photo of her with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I know she's done some pretty interesting talks around the country. So we're excited to have her here. And I'm going to give her a warm welcome and turn it over to Dr. Fredrickson. Take it away.
All right, thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm glad to be able to share a little bit of the latest research from the PEP Lab, which we have been doing just, in the last month or so, that help us to underscore how important it is to continue to work on cultivating positive emotions, positive connections, even when we're facing difficulty. Especially when we're facing difficulty. Worldwide, we're all staying at home. This is getting, it's wearing on people. Depression and anxiety are at increased rates. So are things like domestic violence and alcohol consumption. So it's kind of, these times are kind of bringing out the worst in people. And the science of emotions and of positive emotions can help us make a course correction or understand the ways that we can create space to have a better day and get through this. And of course, that's, staying at home is one hardship. And then the others, especially in New York City and that surrounding area, just been completely hit by the worst of this. So I don't want to just be thinking, oh, woe is us for staying at home. We also know so many people who are, facing a lost loved one. And, we have more than 250,000 people who have died from this already. So these are tough times. There's no minimizing that. But some of the research that comes out of the PEP Lab has focused on how people deal with tough times, how even in the midst of the worst, we can experience all kinds of emotions, and positive emotions side by side with negative emotions. And so the other sort of foundational aspects of the science of positive emotions is that they fundamentally change the way the human brain works, so that we take in more information, our peripheral vision expands, we can see more, we can link ideas together more creatively, we can think of more possible solutions to a difficult situation, and we see ourselves as more connected with others rather than apart from others. And in fact, most of my research in the last 5 years or so has been focused on this co-experience of positive emotions that we call positivity resonance. And that is anytime we experience a positive emotion collectively or collaboratively with others, it can just be with one other or with a larger group. And those, it's not just the shared feeling that's a part of those moments, it's also there's a synchrony in nonverbal behavior and in biology that really calls into question whether it's one person's emotion being caught by another and then reflected back. We think of it more of as something, an emotional state that unfolds across multiple brains and bodies at once. And so those of us in the PEP lab pretty excited about the kind of research that we do. And I knew my doctoral students are always thinking of ways to make the work that we do more relevant and help give it away to people in the community and broader. And so I invited many of my grad students, or invited everybody to join us here. And I'm gonna introduce each as we go in turn. So to meet everybody, you have to stay the whole time. So I'm going to turn it over now to Jenny Jo. And so Jenny, if you can, Jenny's finished her second year of graduate school. So halfway through, or almost halfway through, or getting to the halfway mark. I'll let her describe a little bit more the work that she's been doing on this concept of positivity resonance. Oh, are you mute? I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Sorry. Yeah, I just unmuted myself. Sorry. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Jo. As Barb said, I've just finished my second year in the social psychology program. So today I want to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about a research study we have been collecting the data for the past year before the outbreak of the pandemic. The goal of that study, the study is called the Daily Wellness Study, and the goal of that study is to examine how day-to-day connections with others, including your relationship with stranger acquaintances or relationship with your loved ones, can transcend self-interest by increasing virtuous behaviors and experiences. By virtuous behaviors and experiences, we are specifically looking at 3 virtues, which we call them as communal virtues, which are spirituality, humility, and altruism. So participants are randomly assigned to receive 4 interventions, 2 social intervention groups and 2 control groups. The 2 social intervention groups are encouraged to have more moments of positive connections or positivity resonance with others. The only distinction between the 2 groups is that one group is encouraged to have more moments of positivity resonance with their weak ties. In other words, there's with strangers or acquaintances specifically. So we track their positive connections in 3 communal virtues for 35 nights by collecting nightly reports. And then we ended up have a total of 405 participants in the study who together contributed 10,000 person days in the final analysis. So perceived positivity resonance are measured using the 7-item perceived positivity resonance scale we developed in the lab. For each night, participants self-reported the percentage of time from one single longest interaction during which they experience positive connections they have with stranger acquaintances or with loved ones, respectively. So the loved ones are not limited to family members, friends, or romantic partners. I'll give you 2 example items from our scale. One is, for what proportion of time did you experience a mutual sense of warmth and concern toward the others? And for what proportion of time did you feel in sync with the others? At the same time, they also reported their experience and enactment of virtues, including altruism, spirituality, and humility. So each virtue was measured by 2 items on a scale from 1 to 7. So here I also want to give you an example of the items for spirituality. So the statement for enacted spirituality is that today I set aside time for an activity that I consider spiritual. The statement for experienced spirituality is today I had a feeling of strong connection to all life. So we then took the average of the state enacted virtues, so which would do the same for all 3 virtues, and higher score indicate more virtuous experience and behaviors. So we're interested in looking at the dosage effect of positivity resonance on virtuous experience and behaviors, not only on a daily basis, but also across people. So what we found is that there's a significant positive association between positive resonance and virtues, both on a daily basis, but also across people. So to be more specific, the results suggest that for people who have more positive connections with others, they also reported more experience and behaviors of virtues. But for within person, for a specific individual, on days when they feel more connections with others, they also report more behaviors and experience of virtues. So the patterns hold for all 3 virtues in our results. So to further unpack the dosage effect of positivity resonance on virtues, we also found that people who are in the social intervention groups show the strongest dosage effect of positivity resonance on their virtues, experience, and behaviors. So I think this study has a great implications for right now in the time of social distancing, and how this sense of connection, the quality of our day-to-day social relationship with others may influence how we may impact our behaviors, especially if we think about humility and altruism, and how that may have an influence on our decision making in like whether we want to wear a mask in public places, or do we keep personal hygiene for other people's health and the society. So currently, we're also doing a follow-up on the same group of people just to see how these interventions may have a lasting effect on people during this time of pandemic, and whether the social interventions have protect people from certain risks that come imposed by the social distancing situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny. That's really one of the things I like most about this study, is that it gives you a sense of, if I change my day and include more connections with others, there's other things that follow. You get a bigger boost in becoming a good human. So actually, building on this, I want to introduce now Taylor West, who is just finished her first year. Actually, just this week finished her first year in our doctoral program. So Taylor, take it away.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Taylor. I'm interested in how differences in positive emotions in social relationships may be particularly adaptive in their cultural or environmental context. So I'm going to go into a little background first, and then link it back to what we're doing in the lab and how it relates to COVID-19. So humans have a unique ability to predict the emotions and intentions of others, primarily through nonverbal behavior, which is thought to have allowed for greater mass cooperation. And smiles are one of the most important facial displays or social signals, particularly for coordinated behavior. So some other research has shown that happiness and surprise can be recognized the quickest, even in low resolution. It's most reliably recognized compared to other emotions, and it's the emotion we can most make out from a distance. So we also know that during interactions with strangers, the presence of a smile predicts trust and sharing resources, and observing these smiles and interaction with strangers makes future cooperative behavior more likely. So we pick up on these cues all the time in people's faces, and they guide our behavior in our interactions with others, particularly others that we don't know. However, we also know that cultures vary in emotion expressiveness and also who it's appropriate to interact with. So another line of work suggests that nonverbal behaviors such as smiling, laughter, and also positive emotions are more frequent in countries that are the product of migration over the last 500 years. So in other words, countries that have high ancestral diversity or high number of different source countries have higher reports of smiling, laughter, and positive affect. And the theory is that these societies that were the product of all these immigrants needed a way to communicate without a shared language or shared norms. So our nonverbal signals became stronger over time, and this led to more cooperative behavior and trust among people. So in our own lab, we look at positivity resonance with strangers, and we do find, as Jenny was saying, this predicts greater feelings of spirituality and connectedness in a US sample. And this question of positive emotions between strangers, I think, is particularly interesting right now in America, which is a country that is high in ancestral diversity. We are very smiley. We talk with strangers all the time. And we have a lot of flexibility in our social relationships, meaning we make new friends or have new romantic partners, and this is normal for us to do. So now we're wearing masks, which hide much of our ability to read the expression of others, especially when we're out in public. So I think now is an interesting time to see what we do. Humans are amazingly adaptive, so I'm sure we'll come up with a new way to communicate, whether we're smiling bigger so our eyes contract, or maybe we change how we use more verbal indicators of friendliness, or maybe you find yourself trying harder to make eye contact with people when you're out and about. So another consideration with the face-to-face interactions, which is a key component to positivity resonance, is it allows for facial mimicry. And this is the tendency for you to imitate others' emotions, which you do unconsciously. And it's thought to relate to empathy, and it's just not quite possible through digital interactions such as this. You can't quite sync up. You can't quite make eye contact, and eye contact helps you process smiles and the intentions behind a smile. And it actually, they found that facial mimicry helps you decode genuine or fake smiles. And through digital interactions, they all look genuine. So it's hard to read the intentions and the emotions of others. And this really hinders you from getting the full benefit of your social connection. But of course, not everyone maybe has the ability to have face-to-face interactions right now. So we are also looking at, in this new study with COVID right now, how these differences in interaction type might be affecting their mental health or their social relationships, whether it's digital or face-to-face, and with who. Is it with strangers out in the public or with your close others at home?
Thank you, Taylor. I was thanking you in mute mode. So I really appreciate your describing the nuances of a smile. I think a lot of times we just think, oh, smiling is just this, superficial habit, but it's the beginning of a much, much deeper psychology of connection and of the building the social fabric between us. And thank you also for mentioning our study that we're collecting data from a nationwide sample right now on positive emotions, positive connection, and how people are coping with staying at home during a pandemic. And so, and Michael Prinzing, who is the other graduate student with us, I'll let him introduce his path towards the PEP Lab in a minute because it's an unusual one, is especially interested in helping spread the word about what makes for a good day during a pandemic. So take it away, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I'm Michael. Actually, one thing I can't help, when Taylor was talking about wearing masks and hiding your smile, I've noticed myself, when I interact with somebody at the grocery store or wherever, there's a brief moment of uncertainty where I can't read the person. I don't know, how should I be interacting with this person until they speak. And then I can hear in their voice the kind of emotional tenor to it. And then I know, oh, okay, this is how to proceed. I kind of wonder if we'll just get more and more and more in the voice of hey, I don't know. We're already, as was mentioned, Americans are pretty expressive that way anyways. So we make it even more extreme. But anyway, so that was a preface, but like Barb was saying, I am not a standard psychology PhD. And in fact, I'm in the philosophy department here at UNC Chapel Hill. And I'm sort of broadly interested in what makes life good. And I think that's a interdisciplinary question. And so I'm very much in my own research trying to combine sort of traditional philosophical methods and empirical psychological ones to try and better understand the good life. So with that being said, today the philosopher is the practical one. What I'm talking about is how to have a better day during the pandemic. Barb and I just recently wrote an article we're sending around to try and get into a popular venue somewhere about this study that was mentioned. We have data from over 600 people across the United States asking about how they're doing, what they're doing, things that they're feeling and experiencing. And what we found is, in line with a lot of past research, the people who are doing well are not actually people who are, under some sort of delusion, thinking everything is fine, sunshine and rainbows. They're the people who, even when they're stressed, even when they're anxious or sad, they still feel the good things. They don't lose the good when the bad comes along. So they're still able to feel love for the people around them. They're still able to feel gratitude for the things that they still have. They're able to take joy in the small things. And so the question that I'm interested in and would like to try and shed some light on now is, how can you be like that? How can you continue to feel the good things, experience the positive states, even when the bad things have come? And so our data can shed some light on this. There are some obvious things that you probably don't need to be told, but maybe it's nice to be reminded. Things like exercising, self-care, spiritual activities like prayer or meditation. The time that people spent on those activities, we found, was correlated with the number of positive states that they experienced that day. So the more time you spend exercising, taking care of yourself, the more positive states you get. But perhaps even more interestingly, that's especially true for people who are experiencing more of the negative states. So the more stressed, anxious, lonely, depressed, etc. you are, the more important it is to take time to take care of yourself. So that's the first thing. But that being said, I think it's really important to not become too self-focused. An enormous body of evidence now shows just how foundational social connection is for your health and happiness. This is kind of like what the PEP Lab is all about these days. And so one thing you might think is, oh, well, I'll stay in touch with people through social media. That's a great tool that we now have. We wouldn't have had a couple of decades ago to stay connected with people. But what we found is that it's really important that you use it in the right way. there's a kind of passive way of using social media where you're just scrolling through your feed, you know, you like somebody's post or whatever, but you're not actively communicating with anyone. You're not actively sharing or expressing yourself. You're just passively scrolling. And what we found was that was associated with more negative states. So not a big surprise to me looking at my own Facebook feed. I mean, it's just constantly like the world is falling apart and like, you know, look at so-and-so politician who's done this horrible thing. I mean, it's just constant like that. And it seems like keeping up with those things is not helping people. But actively interacting with people, we found was positively associated with those positive states. So the more time that you spend interacting with other people, the better day you have. But it matters how you are interacting. So face-to-face interactions, when that's possible, we found came with more positive states. Video and phone calls, we found the same. But text-based communication, so emails or texting and things, there was no relationship at all. So it seems like it matters that you're able to actually see the person's face or hear their voice. And the reason for that, we think, is because it's just really, really hard to establish a meaningful connection with somebody via text. It's asynchronous. You can't see their face or hear their voice. You're just reading their words in your own head and responding to them. And what we found is that the relationship between interaction time and positive states was explained by the feelings of connection, care, and concern, the positivity resonance that were experienced during those interactions. So what really matters is not so much how much time do you spend interacting or do you interact at all, but rather how good of a connection do you make with other people. So that's also kind of a nice segue into the last little bit of advice which I have, which is help people. One of the things we found was regardless of how much time you spent interacting with somebody else, if you went out of your way to help someone, you had a better day. So I have an acronym. It's a little cheesy, but I hope it helps people to remember the advice. It's March. March is the month that the pandemic started. Also, it implies a kind of solidarity. We're all staying together as one, coming together, staying connected. It's minimize passive scrolling through social media, accept negative emotion. So don't think I'm going to avoid stress and anxiety and so on. It's a reasonable reaction to the way the world is. R is really connect, with people. So make those meaningful connections. C is care for yourself, and H is help others. So March.
Thank you, Michael. So anyway, I know that normally the presentation parts of these are sort of short and we want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. So Jonathan, could you tell us if there's any questions that have percolated up?
Yeah, I think there's a really good basic one that is you can speak to is what is psychophysiology for those people who may not know what that means, because it sounds pretty scary. It sounds like psychophysiology. What is it?
Yeah, it's the study of how our bodies respond in subtle ways. We like a change in heart rate, change in sweat gland activity, change in blood pressure. That's an area that I had some of my training as a postdoc. And so the kinds of biological markers that we measure in our own lab are those kinds that you can get by just, taping sensors to the skin and picking up the electrical signals that, are your echocardiogram and sweat gland activity. More so now we've started to look at cellular aging and changes in gene expression. So our biological measures are kind of escaping the word psychophysiology, but we still love the acronym PEPLAB, so we probably stick with it.
That's great, thank you. And then there's a question that may go to Michael, but it's open to anybody. It's about if passive scrolling is not necessarily beneficial, why do we do it? What are we getting out of it?
Curiosity could be one thing. I mean, it's hard to say. So this is a great question. I mean, it's true people do quite a lot of things that they know are bad for them. And the explanations for why are probably many. Mm-hmm. I think in some cases, it may also just be a longing for connection, especially in times like these. You want to interact with someone. You want to share with someone to learn about what somebody else is doing. And it's just a really easy way to at least feel like you're doing that, even if you aren't. Which isn't to say it's never possible. I mean, a friend of mine was telling me just the other day, I was sharing some of this with her, that she found somebody's Instagram feed that she didn't know them. She doesn't even use social media, but she just heard about this person. She went and looked at it and it seemed so authentic and she felt like she really got to know this person. I mean, in a way she sort of did, but you know, like, so I don't think it's always bad or necessarily, but it's potentially a couple of negative things, I think.
Great, thank you.
And we tend to also, the curiosity piece is important because, you know, some research has shown that if people feel like there's information that's knowable that they don't know, that's an unpleasant state that we feel like we have to be caught up. So it's fear of missing out. But there are better ways to join in than just kind of being a voyeur.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, raise your hand if you've noticed you've been scrolling meaninglessly for a while and all of a sudden you've been like, what am I doing? And you like put the phone down, like, yeah, we all get caught up in it. There's a question for Jenny from Kate, who she wants to clarify something from your study design. And you may have to help translate this for any non-experts in the room, Jenny, but she wants to know, for the social treatment group, was the manipulation asking the participants to reflect on their positive social experiences? So the control participants were not doing the social reflection? It stuck out to me because it reminded me of how often gratitude journals are recommended to us.
Yeah, that's a great question. So our manipulation was actually a daily. So for each intervention group, so they all receive an email reminder every day, and the email also include a link to a TED Talk on positivity resonance or different topics for specific conditions. So for the two social conditions, they watch the video on how the benefits of social connections with others. And the control group, we have one active control, which is the mindfulness group, and we also have a control group, which they do nothing, and so they don't watch any video. So we didn't ask them to reflect on any positive connection experience with others. We just asked them recalling one of the longest interaction you have today and how much of the time you feel connected or in sync with the person you were interacting with.
I could just jump in right there. In addition to letting people know that there's some benefit to social interaction, we just said, just go have a little bit more of it every day. So in addition to bringing awareness to the value of positive connection, we just said experiment with connecting with people more. And then they reported on it at the end of the day. So anyway, I just wanted to jump in with that detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Kate, let us know if that answered your question. I think it did, but if you have any other follow-ups, please let us know. Michael, the legendary Michael, has a question. He wants to know, can you speak to the science behind why naming your emotions as they arise can help reduce the impact of more negative emotions, but naming the more positive ones can magnify them? And then he has a parenthetical says, or am I getting that wrong?
No, that's very true. There's research to show that if we can label our negative emotions, we kind of defang them, and sort of we can kind of step aside and sort of say, oh, that's the anger talking, or that's what sadness does to people, and that sort of thing. And so it lessens them. It's not so much naming positive emotions that allows them to grow. What research shows, the better way to have our emotions grow is to become aware of them and savor them and kind of immerse ourselves in them. If we step back and just analyze them in the same way that we analyze negative emotions helps defang them, then we also defang our positive emotions. And this is one of the great occupational hazards of being a scientist who studies positive emotions, is that I can start talking about it from a scientific angle and then I'm not feeling it at all anymore. So the best way to expand a positive emotion is to bring awareness to it, be mindful, but also learn to savor in a light way, not so much a heavy analysis way. So the way we use our words matter. So we just want to very lightly label and then just kind of lean into it and say, oh, this is wonderful. And how can I extend the good feeling?
Don't explain the joke.
Pardon?
It's like not explaining the joke.
Yes.
Right. This one is for Taylor. I think I think I'm directing this because I think this is what you talked about countries that seem to have more sources of immigration had more smiling and maybe more emotional range. I'm shorthanding this, and I apologize if that's clumsy. And this person's curious to know, is the converse true? Are there more negative emotions or expressions as well in countries that are more diverse or more homogenous?
You know, you can hear me. Okay. I know that they found that there was greater emotion expressivity and that there was greater cultural norms around expressing emotion publicly. I don't know about the frequency of negative emotions. I can't speak to that.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm curious to know sort of a practical question, but mainly because I'm nosy. So sounds like you've been pretty nimble and you're able to collect data during this time and you're still forging ahead with your studies. What's the turnaround time for when you'll be able to share some of what you've learned? Sort of comparing the world before and the world now as it exists during the pandemic. Is this something where you'll be able to write some white papers over the summer, or is this a year from now or longer? Yeah. Is this Jenny's PhD? Like, what are we?
Well, there's things that happen on a slow, regular scientific track, and that's sadly, psychology is one of the slower areas of science in terms of publication lags and things. That's changing a bit. But a lot of journals in our field right now are fast tracking anything to do with COVID-19. So they're realizing that the time to get this out is now. And also, Michael and I were just exchanging an email today about this article he's written that helps, convey this, how to have a better day during a pandemic. And, we're trying to float it as an op-ed or maybe a press release from UNC. Typically, I wouldn't do a press release on my work until it's published, but now it seems like, well, it's going to be helpful for people now. So I think that's a risk worth taking. So we're gonna do what we can to get that March message out, if it does come out, we can send you a link, Jonathan, so that you can put it up on your website.
Yeah, I hate to give you all homework, but I would love to have, Michael, if you could write out, I was trying to scribble down your acronym, but we would love to share it out after this. And we would love to have any information about anything you publish. And then Dr. Fredrickson, if you want to share, because we'll share the link as well, but tell us about the course that you're offering around positive psychology.
Yeah. I actually created a course a few years ago that conveys positive psychology through the lens of the PEP lab. So it talks about the benefits of positive emotions and positive social connections. And it's on the Coursera platform. And so if you look for a course by me on Coursera, it's free. It's a 6-week course. I think Coursera does charge money if you want to get like a verified certificate that shows that you took the course and you submit it somewhere as a transcript. That might cost money, but taking the course is free. And so if you want to share these ideas with others or kind of go get together with some friends and take the course and then discuss the material, Jonathan said he would put a link to it in the chat.
Sure will. Well, Taylor, Jenny, Michael, Barbara, thank you so much. Your research is really, really intriguing. And I think you're right in that it's needed now more than ever. This idea of emotions not necessarily being solely mine, but connected to my interactions is very, very cool. I look forward to following your progress. We hope you come back to Morehead Planetarium and Science Center in real time or virtually, however you choose, and we'll figure out how to express ourselves with masks on or not. We'll have a good time. And do keep us posted on all of your progress. Everyone out there, thank you for joining us. It looks like we may have had one question that snuck in. Oh, it just says, this was terrific. Thank you for your time, from someone from one of our viewers. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. If you do want to drop some feedback into the chat, you can do that for everyone in the audience. We'd love to hear other topics you'd like to know, what you liked about this event, what other information you would like to have. We can track all of that down for you. Our next Science Cafe will be June 3rd, Wednesday, same time. It will be virtual as well. We hope to see everybody then. Scientists, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Michael.